Hey folks, hope you're well. I'll just keep crashing through these bipinnate wattles, or trying to. I'm in Sutherland Shire in Warrenora. I'm just doing some vegetation mapping validation sort of rapid plots. And I've just come down onto this access road at Warrenora, the road that goes to Warrenora Heights, which they keep closed. And I've just seen this one on the side of the road. Now, look, it's got no business being here really, but this is a great example of how these bipinnate wattles get around and just sort of naturalise on the road edge, just like that falciparia the other day. I've walked along this road. There's another one further down, and they're just on the edge. They've got no business being in the Hawkesbury sandstone gully woodland at all. They will just colonise this sort of edge and won't really become part of the mid-story. So I've had a bit of a look at it. Just check out the trunk. It's in the dense shade here, but it's not doing anything like that parvipinnula chunk was doing, if you've seen that video. I'll just try and get some better light. There's no sign of any sort of lichens at all. It sort of looks like it's got lenticels on it. And if it was falciparia or parvipinnula, I'd expect a little bit of mottling or even a fair bit of mottling going on. This is just a nice, smooth, like consistently coloured trunk. It's sort of an olive green to a brown, sort of a mid-brown, greeny brown, I'd say. Looking a bit like parvipinnula, I guess. Doesn't really look like decurrens. And then it's getting about, it's up to about 10 metres tall now. Oh, hang on. No, refrain that. It's probably about 7, 8 metres tall, but they can turn into a genuinely big tree. And this is what I think is Acacia mearnsii. I saw some in around Mittagong the other day where it sort of belongs, and it was in flower. This one's not in flower, but it might have put some flowers on and they're finished, or they might be still coming, but it's not in flower at the moment. Now, one of the first things with mearnsii I look for, it's a very weedy wattle. It does get around, but in the sunlight, the leaves are glossy. They've got this sort of glossy hue to them, or the foliage. It's got a bit of a glossy hue. It's shiny, a little bit shiny. And now, maybe not all the time, but it's something I look for straight away. Just that shiny. It's probably a hard thing to pick up and show on a video, but they've got this really sort of glossy look to them, and they sort of reflect the sunlight a bit when you move them around. So that's the first thing I look for. It's got really small clustered pinnules like the parvipinnula. So if I saw this guy, I'd sort of be wrestling with mearnsii versus parvipinnula, I reckon. I just think falciparia has a bit of a different look to it. The foliage is more spaced, and they're just not as clustered, and it doesn't have that sort of glossiness. And then if I sort of look at the trunk as well, it doesn't have a trunk anything like parvipinnula. So I think I can narrow down on mearnsii pretty quick. Now, I want to get into the glands, and I'll do my frustrating work here again, but that's pretty good. So what you tend to get in mearnsii is a bit like parvipinnula. It's a bit of a hodgepodge of jugary and interjugary glands, and what you get in mearnsii is glands that don't look totally jugary. They're a bit sort of subjugary, or you might call them completely interjugary. Now, I'd like to be able to remember what New South Wales Flora says exactly, but I think they say the jugary gland can move a bit all over the place, and it moves to sort of look like it's a subjugary gland. And then very often you get that interjugary gland smack bang below the sort of top gland there. You can see it there, and you can see it there, and you can see it there. You can sort of see how they join together. I think I'm going to get into the shade rather than the sun. See how that goes. Yeah, there you go. And if you just compare it to the parvipinnula video I put on about a week or so back, they were very different. They had up to 1 to 3 interjugaries. I think this guy can get 1 to 2 interjugaries, but a lot of the time you get this big, I'd say this big sort of upper gland that's trying to be a jugary gland, and then you get an interjugary smacked bang underneath it. And that's what you typically see in mearnsii. The rachis is hairy. It's got these fine hairs on it. And I did say in parvipinnula they're hairy as well. You can get some sort of fine hairs in mearnsii. But when it comes to mearnsii and parvipinnula, I can have a bit of a wrestle. I can have a battle with them. But it's just a matter of comparing the two as many times as you can. I'm going to get another leaf and we'll have another look. Let's get some representation. They're really heavily clustered. They're glossy. I can just see that they're glossy in the light. They've got that glossy hue to them. It's like, you know, I'm sure I don't have to labour it to you, but someone's put nail polish on them or nail varnish or something like that. And I just want to try getting that again. You can see sort of one jugary gland, or it might be subjugary. And then you can see that the interjugaries are sort of buggerising around and with a lot of variation. But again, sometimes it's smack bang wedged there under the first gland. It's all a little bit messy. And that's just where I put it in that parvipinnula box. It's doesn't do consistent sort of patterning with the glands. But again, I think you sort of got 2 glands there joined together. Oh, what's going on with that one? There might be a whole row of glands there. I just can't quite see it. I don't think the sun's going to help. Very interesting. I'm just going to get another one, see what's going on. I'm going to try and get a nice big, helpful leaf. You want a helpful leaf, I call it. Remember to get a representative sample. You can't just look at one leaf. That goes for any plant, really. Well, it's outside my hand. This is the sort of stuff you can buggerise around with. So you can see, I think we're getting up to 2 glands, maybe one sort of what we might call subjugary and one interjugary. I'm not getting up to 3 like we did for parvipinnula, and not getting up to 5 like we did for falciparum. You can see those sort of grey hairs on the rachis. It's very sort of downy, a bit like Acacia pubescens, really. It's a bit sort of downy there. And again, there's that one where a sort of a smaller gland is wedged into a sort of larger top gland. So you can see there's a lot of variation there with mearnsii, but it seems to me there's only ever 2 glands between each pair of pinnae, and I think you might see that said. I think you might see it say 1 to 2 interjugary glands, jugary gland appearing subjugary or interjugary. It's a little bit messy, mearnsii, so just look out for that, but that's probably enough for you, I would think. Let's just try one more. Very clustered, very glossy. Yeah, it's sort of doing the same thing. It might help to try a different tree, but that's sort of what they're looking like. Just very different from that mearnsii parvipinnula the other day. And it's they're the ones I sort of home in on, those ones there, that one there as well. So hopefully that helps a little bit. The flowers are a sort of pale, creamy yellow. They're not really on the darker side. They're sort of a creamy yellow. if you're around the Mittagong area, it's November 2024. I saw them there in flower the other day. Oh, it's actually December now. December today, but this guy isn't flowering. It's going to get a fair bit bigger than that. On the edge of a sandstone gully. And just note that trunk. Just note that very uniform sort of trunk. That was very different to what we saw for parvipinnula with those models, that mottling, whether they're lichens or something like that. And felicifolia had a bit of a different pattern as well. I don't know, I can't really scratch anything off it. It's got a bit of maybe waxy resin on it, but yeah. So when you see mearnsii, have a go at it. Look, it's very common on roadsides. As soon as you drive down the Hume Highway towards Goulburn, from say Sydney, you're going to get it on the side of the road. You'll get it on the side of the road once you get it to around Mittagong, and maybe earlier than that, maybe sort of Bargo. And it's prolific. It's very prolific on the side of the road. It really loves the roadside mearnsii. There's one just down there that's getting to about, I think it's hard to pick out, I'm sorry, but it's just there, and that's well and truly hitting 10 metres now. So they're a nice genuine wattle, but they do get weedy. So just remember that nice glossy foliage. Hey folks, well, not to confuse you, but I'm throwing this detail in on the Acacia mearnsii video. I forgot to add this to the parvipinnula video, and rather than delete the video off and add it, I'll just off YouTube, I'll just add it into this mearnsii one, so at least you've got it. Just got to get into the habit of doing it. So parvipinnula is a tree to 10 metres high. I normally see them a lot smaller than that. Normally 3, 4, 5 metres is how I see them, but it might just depend where you are. Just remember the smooth black and blue-grey patches, what I call the mottling. It's reported to be on a variety of soils, and I guess it is. I've seen them on sandy, but if I think about it, I've seen them in vegetation like Sydney turpentine ironbark forest, so that's on sort of the Ashfield shale. So they'll get onto shale as well. So they're reported to be on a variety. They've got a limited distribution. They're endemic to New South Wales, another endemic. Generally from around Sandy Hollow, that's in the Hunter Valley, down to Bateman's Bay. They're also recorded around Orange. There's some interesting records around there. They're not really reported as weedy elsewhere, not that I could find. I'm not sure about overseas, but I can't really find any websites going on about their weediness. So it might have been one of the ones that just doesn't naturalise as readily. And they reportedly flower from April to January. I've seen them flowering in November 2024 around Bargo. They were in full flower. I'd say spring, summer would be the main time for them. That's the Australasian Virtual Herbarium. That's probably the core sort of distribution there. Not sure about this record up here, but you'd have to think that is sort of the core distribution with maybe some Botanic Garden specimens here and there. But yeah, the so it doesn't have too big of a range. It's a bit limited compared to some of the other ones. And then mearnsii. This is mearnsii, where you can straight away see that these are a little bit different. Very hairy on the ruckus. Don't forget the glossy pinnules. For mearnsii, that's a tree to 10 metres high as well. I probably haven't seen them any bigger than that. The bark is smooth to fissured, brown, green-brown, and I think I was capturing that today. And they do go to black when they're old. They're definitely on a variety of soils as well. They're not too fussy, but mainly I see them on, I'd say, shale-based and volcanic. They can get into sandy vegetation too. They definitely get onto sort of tall, moist basalt forests and things like that. So I just associate them with the southern highlands of New South Wales, that Wingecarriby area. They're a real sort of strong part of the vegetation down there in a variety of vegetation types. native to New South Wales, but they're not endemic. They're also in Victoria and Tasmania. They grow on the tablelands and coast of New South Wales. From as far north, they reckon naturally is around Pete's Ridge. That's just up there near Gosford, north of Sydney. South through the eastern tablelands and coastal areas to Victoria. It's now naturalised extensively well outside its natural range. So I reckon maybe all of us aren't too sure what the natural range is or was anymore. Just where they've gone, they've just, spread everywhere. They're a weed in South Australia and Western Australia now. They're a weed in many parts of the world, and they're a really popular tree for industrial commercial uses. They're used extensively for tannin, for leather and adhesives, and they're used in timber production. They're used to make chipboard and things like that. So it's a really popular, useful tree worldwide, and it's just gone everywhere. Flowering from October to December. I saw them in Mittagong in November 2024 in full flower. The ones I looked at today in Sydney weren't in flower, so whether they flowered earlier or not, I'm not sure. That's the Australasian Herbarium records, and you can see what would be the core distribution. Maybe that there would be the core, and apparently all this is just subsequent naturalisations. That's natural in Tasmania, but it might have moved further afield there as well. But so somewhere here it's gone from, naturally local to sort of weedy along here in Victoria, into South Australia, Western Australia. Not sure what's going on here. It looks like it's a weed in New Zealand now as well. So it's a little bit harder with mearnsii to get the actual distribution. You'll bump into it really readily if you're working New South Wales around here. I think you can, identify it readily just once you get familiar with it. Okay, that's it for those two. Oh, just a table here, sorry. Throwing this in again, yeah, like I keep saying, it's mearnsii and parvipinnula that I find pretty tricky. I find the other four are well and truly separated from these two guys, but yeah, I forgot the detail of my own table, but mearnsii, they can have jugary glands, but they sometimes appear interjugary. They're about 1 mil or 2 below the pinnae. Interjugary glands, yes, 1 to 2 in most cases, and that's what we picked up today in that video. Parvipinnula, remember, 1 to 3 interjugary. They're often joined, but we saw some joining in mearnsii as well, at least between the jugary gland and one of the interjugaries. Jugary, yes, but sometimes absent. So they're just two species that put their glands sort of all over the shop. And they don't get up to the number of felicifolia, so I just sometimes have to wrestle between the two of these, but I think I'm pretty good now at discerning them just based on the glands. I go for this column here. Some websites are talking about the branchlets being different in terms of the hairs, the foliage being different colours, the branchlets having ridges on them and things like that. I just go straight for this. I just find it's the easiest thing to latch onto, but I might check out those other features as well and see if they help. Alrighty, that really is it. Okay.